I'd like to welcome everyone to this regular council meeting from the Township of Portland on January 2nd, 2020. And we will start with disclosure of pecuniary interests.
Yes, I have a few items on the agenda, items 7.1, 7.2, and 7.9, which deal with the CBM Lansley Pit and Roswell Pit, as well as the Queen's Park update, Bill 132 for the Aggregates Act. And the nature of the pecuniary interest is that I have a family member that operates an aggregate in the township, and any direction or requirement from them could be considered a pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a gallery full of family members of Councillor Bailey, and we're going to commence the swearing in.
Good afternoon and welcome to members of council and our guests. Ms. Sarah Bailey will make declaration of office for the remainder of the 2018-2022 term of council. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all who have attended this special event. Okay, if you would stand and take your oath, please.
I, Sarah Bailey, having been appointed to the office of councillor in the municipality of the Township of Puslinch, do solemnly promise and declare that I will truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise this office to the best of my knowledge and ability. I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof for the exercise of this office in a biased, corrupt, or in any other improper manner. I will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and I make the solemn promise and declaration conscientiously, believing it to be true, and knowing that it is of the same force and effect as if made under oath.
Excellent.
Bravo.
You could congratulate, or help me congratulate our new council member, please.
Congratulations and welcome.
Should we get a photo up front here? Do your family want a photo? You can take 5 minutes, so I guess I don't have to sign
To
it.
go up there.
Okay.
You go around front there. Get your picture
All
taken.
of you there.
No, this is your minute.
Can we get all council up there?
Oh, see?
Be a new,
Oh,
new
okay.
council
See, Matthew?
photo?
I didn't dress for this.
Yeah, you did great. Just watch your.
Out of the way.
See, at least you're not gonna suffer alone.
No, they all have to do with me.
I'm gonna move this table out of the way. Forward in the picture.
Sorry, Glenn. Just wanna make sure I'm out.
Come on, you want to be there?
I'd love the photo of it. Never get my luck.
I can see you doing that.
Sit in our order?
Well, it might be nice if we got a couple sitting in the front. That way we can get you closer together.
Perfect. No. This will just be.
I don't know. There's a lot of cameras. Look at the fun kid there smiling.
Big deal. Oh, so that's away. Sorry, thought you were done.
That's okay, I'm gonna take about 20. It's gotta be one
He's
good
already
one.
taken 100. Okay. Good.
Quarter?
Yep.
Okay. You can still pretend you enjoyed this.
Thank you, Mike.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Oh, let her go past me here.
A little bit more.
Did she get past already?
No, not yet, she's on the table there. Now she's coming, better tuck in. I will do. Didn't have a big lunch, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Now it's your fault.
Yeah. Responsibility.
So Sarah, well, you're going to get that framed for her. Perfect. Okay, so we'll carry on. We have a closed session that's going to begin at the end of this meeting. We'll have two confidential reports. Do I need to read those out? Because they're going to be later. No one will go into close, I can read them. So we have moved by Councillor Goida, seconded by Councillor Sapoulos, that council receives the declaration of office made by Sarah Bailey. All in favor? Carried. You voted for yourself. Okay, next on the list is the adoption of receipt of minutes of the previous meeting. Where's the, moved by Councillor Goida, seconded by Councillor Sapoulos, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as written and distributed. A, December 18th, 2019, regular council meeting. Any discussion on those minutes? Councillor Bummer?
Just one minor update regarding the issue on Town Line Road. In the minutes, it suggested that the resolution we passed regarding the 1-foot reserve was that it would be removed, but I think Councillor Sapoulos and I had a discussion that the idea was that it'd be, we wanted confirmation from the landowners before it was relocated.
And that's been corrected?
I think that's
In the
been
minutes?
addressed in the minutes.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
No problem? Anything? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Any business arising out of the previous minutes, other than that you just mentioned? Anything? No. Okay, we have a public meeting scheduled for, public information meeting will be held on January 16th, 2020 at 7 PM at the Municipal Complex, 7404 Wellington Road 34. And that's our budget information meeting. All right. So now into communications. Let me just get up here.
Excuse me.
First one is the source water protection communications, pre-consultation comments regarding the proposed Lancy pit. Any questions or comments on that one? Councillor Bulmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate these comments, but they use a term in there that I think we've all heard before. They talk about consumptive water taking, and in the report, it sort of distinguishes between how the policies would be applied towards consumptive and non-consumptive water takings. And I was wondering if perhaps I'd like to get a better handle on how our source water protection people, whether it's our committees or Kyle Davis, what percentage of the water taking that takes place on an aggregate site is considered consumptive? Because I know it's often characterized as if it has no impact, but it isn't all just recirculated. There is a certain portion lost. And I'd be interested to find out just exactly what portion would they be considered a typical application be consumptive? So how much leaves in the gravel, how much evaporates, all that stuff? Or do they consider it all recycled?
And who is they? The aggregate company, or you want to report?
Well, this is, either source water protection, and maybe John could help us understand, as our representative, who's the best person to answer that question might be.
I would suggest we start at the staff level with Kyle Davis, and if he has something in hand, that's great. He can respond back to us. Otherwise, he can put a formal request to the Source Water Protection Committee for their consideration.
Okay, I like that idea.
Yep.
Could I suggest we send a letter to Kyle Davis then, asking for clarification on what percentage of a water taking permit for an aggregate site is considered consumptive?
Everybody okay with that?
Thank you.
Any other comments on that?
Yeah,
Councillor Sapoulos?
I asked staff where this application is in process with us. I was wondering if staff could just report it to the council.
Okay.
Just advise us here at the meeting.
Yeah, for sure. So this application, in order to get the expansion to the south of the Lancy pit, the existing Lancy pit, they've done a lot line adjustment with the neighboring property to the south. That lot line adjustment is not complete yet. I think their deadline for that complete application would be March of 2020. So once they do have the lot line adjustment completed and that property would allow them to expand their operating south, once that happens, we would likely see some more information from the ministry regarding the water taking and their application from the ministry. From there, we would need to see a rezoning as well because it's currently zoned A2.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, our next one is the correspondence from CBM St. Mary's on the Roselle pit. Any questions or comments on that one?
Yes,
Councillor Balmer?
give me a moment. This goes back a fair piece. They're talking about expanding into Pond 3. And I think it's important to understand how we got to this point on this site. One of the concerns that came up for the approval of this aggregate operation was concerns around the potential thermal impacts to the groundwater. In other words, warming of the groundwater as a result of creating ponds. And that's why it ended up being phased, where they had to do, the ponds were staged and monitoring was put in place. You saw in the report that they talk about the potential for possibly updating the groundwater model prior to permitting extraction in the third pond in Pond C. I'd like to see a little bit more work done on this by the applicant prior to moving into the third pond, and the reasons why is that as part of their review and approval of the site in the first place, there was concerns about the thermal impacts that would happen when they extracted the first pond. And it was serious enough. It went to the Ontario Municipal Board, but those were resolved. There was agreement between all parties about thresholds that be established, temperature thresholds that be established, that would trigger changes to the operation should they be crossed. Unfortunately, they were based on the groundwater and thermal model of the day, which expected those thermal impacts wouldn't be met or wouldn't be exceeded or wouldn't be felt until after they extracted the first pond. So the conditions were worded regarding the extraction of the first pond. But those thermal impacts actually occurred prior to extracting the first pond. They crossed the threshold, but because it wasn't related to below water table extraction, the ministry didn't feel that they applied. And we've been discussing these things ever since. The thresholds have been crossed. They've been wanting to move towards looking at post-impact responses. The reason that the township was so concerned about having thermal impact responses was you could detect that before it had an impact on the natural environment. And they've been asking to have it the other way around. Once we see an impact to the natural environment, then we'll make a change. It's still not decided. And considering how far wrong the model was in predicting the thermal impacts in the first place, and that they occurred prior to even below water table extraction taking place, I think it warrants asking them to look at that model again, and why didn't it predict that? What was the problem with the model that it failed to acknowledge the potential for thermal impacts prior to below water table extraction, just from the removal of above water table material? And the second reason would be that during this time we've also had concerns raised by a lot of the residents in the area about their ponds. And I'm not a hydrogeologist, and some of them have been addressed and some of them maybe haven't been. But I think this is a good opportunity, before we increase the size of the below water table extraction, that we ask to have that, maybe some more confidence put in the existing models that have been relied on to date and have been shown to be not exactly as predictive as hoped. So I would be hoping that this municipality would support the idea of asking that model be updated and to address the thermal impacts and any impacts on neighbors' ponds prior to the ministry approving that expansion.
Are you asking CBM to provide this work, or are we going to
Yes,
ask?
it's their obligation under the condition of the site plan was that this could be part of what could be asked for, and I'd like to ask the ministry to require that. It's within their purview to ask for it. I'd like this municipality to ask them to exercise their purview.
So let's get them, so if you can shorten up your motion, we'll get a seconder, because if we're gonna ask the ministry officially.
Yep.
So we'll have a resolution from council. Do you want to speak first?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we go through our consultant to put together a letter that we can transmit to the ministry, because that would provide more credibility.
Yes.
If we have an expert rather than us being backroom hydrogeologists. This way,
Exactly.
we ask our our consultant to review it, and taking into consideration the adequacy, questioning the adequacy of the model, that he pen a letter that we can forward on to the ministry for their action.
I would support that, Mr. Mayor. This is particularly because he was involved back then. He's familiar with this, and And if it gives comfort, if everything's fine, I would be comfortable. It's just, I would like to give the neighbors of this of operation that comfort. I'm sorry I interfered. I forgot you were here.
No.
Yeah, we're going to just keep going with Councillor Bulmer first, and we'll work our way around with, what do you have written so far? So what I've written down here, so we have a motion, and it says, moved by Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Bailey. The council receives a correspondence from CBM St. Mary's Cement with respect to CBM Rosal Pit ARA 625-189 site monitoring update, Pond 3 extraction dated November 28th, 2019, and that council directs staff to send the report to the township's hydrogeologist for review and comment on a new ground water model and potential effects on neighboring ponds.
Perfect.
I would suggest on the adequacy of the existing model.
Perfect.
New groundwater on the
Adequacy of the existing model.
existing groundwater model and potential effects on neighboring, is ponds a preferred term for?
The concern is, we want to make sure that the model's correct, and
That's right.
secondly, we want to make sure that whatever they're going to do will not affect
Their ponds.
Yeah. And we want a letter drafted such that we can transmit to the ministry,
Ponds. Okay.
or a
I don't-
report, whatever the case may be.
So once we get the report, then we can forward it on. I don't believe it has to be in the
Yeah.
motion. So, okay, so that's what's on the floor. And Councillor Bulmer already spoke, so Councillor, you're out. You spoke, Councillor Bailey?
I have no comment.
Okay. I'm supportive of asking the hydrogeologists. It's always better when CBM will pay the bill, but I believe Councillor Spoulos is correct that we need to have some technical expertise behind it before we submit it to the minister, and then we'll have a resolution from council once we get that report. So anything further, we're going to vote. All in favor? Carried. Welcome back, Councillor Goyda. All right, next one is the Wellington Common Elements Corporation Mini Lakes. Any questions on that one? Yes.
Yes, my concern is that whatever they come up with budget-wise, we should make sure that it's adequate. In other words, they're putting in equipment that has a certain lifespan and requires a certain periodic maintenance, and there's a cost associated with that maintenance, a cost of replacing equipment at the end of the life cycle. So I would think that we need somebody to go through that document and say, yes, we as township concur with what you're suggesting.
Okay, and would a suggestion be an outside auditor, or are we going to use
No.
staff for that?
Well, no, I would leave it up to staff to determine how they want to do it. This isn't the first time it's come up, I would assume. I don't know how they did it before.
Councillor Bulmer?
Yeah, typically it's GM Blue Plan. Over the years has been monitoring this, the asset, well, their asset management, their management of these assets, I guess, the reserves, part of their annual reports they provide us are reviewed by Gansey and Manero, so I think they'd be the ones best to comment if we want to comment on it. I feel for them. This is a threefold increase in it's only, for their wastewater treatment plant, the 6% for the water it seems within reason, but I concur with Councillor Sapoulis that obviously something must have gone off the rails in terms of keeping the reserves up to check there, but they're obviously on top of it. Even the tripling isn't the end of the world. It's still affordable for them.
Mm-hmm.
But
So we'll just have staff have,
Yeah, my concern is, we're on the hook if something goes wrong here. And
Yeah.
we don't want to be on the hook as a township. And I guess a question for staff is it appropriate to do this now, or as part of the annual review? They submit a report annually, which we review, our consultant reviews, quarterly reports on review, but this is an anomaly. So my question is, of staff, does it make sense to do it now, or is there an opportunity to do it as part of the review of the annual report?
who knows historically when we'd see those reviews from Mini Lakes?
annually,
Yeah, and I know, but where in the year? Is it the end, or is it coming up in the next?
March.
March. So maybe we're just requesting that this component be reviewed as well in those in that report.
Sure, that's fine. So
Does that work?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it's done, that's all I
Yeah.
can.
It will be, yeah.
Okay, you've captured that. Okay. So that kind of covers, so the next one is their budget.
Same comment?
Yeah. Just have it reviewed in their next report coming before council. And same thing for the reserve fund, I assume.
Yes.
So basically reviewing all of those.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now we're on to IG, which is intergovernmental affairs. I don't believe is there a resolution for? Okay, so we have a bunch of IG here. The first one is AMO watch file December 5th. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay. Watch file December 12th, 2019. Any questions or comments?
I just had a question of staff, and they provided the answer. I was concerned whether or not we were using the grant money to update our CIP area, and the answer was yes.
Anything else? All right, the next one is the December 19th. Looks like I found the wrong one.
There was one of these watch file ones, they reminded everybody about we've lost the ability to collect development charges on industrial and commercial. Is that in that one?
I'm not sure which one that is.
Bill 138?
That's coming up.
Okay.
Is that the Queen's Park update? 138's in there and 132 at the same time?
Okay,
It's coming up.
all right.
And then we have the Ontario announces e-scooter pilot on municipal roads. Any questions or comments? No? Okay. So here's the Queen's Park one. It has, so we have a resolution here. I'll read it out. Moved by Councillor Sapoulis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. The council receives the intergovernmental item 7.9 Queen's Park update, and council directs staff to send correspondence in support of AMO's position on the legislative changes in Bill 132 with respect to the Aggregate Resource Act and Safe Drinking Water Act, and the council directs staff to inquire with the township insurance company to better understand the liability concerns and other implications associated with implementing bylaws to allow off-road vehicles to be driven on municipal highways. See, that's where I was saying earlier, like, we should separate this out because Councillor Goyda has declared a pecuniary interest on this motion, so.
One piece of it.
I know, so I'd rather separate it out so she has the opportunity to comment on the ATV part. So that's, we'll take out the ATV part and just
Sure.
create a separate motion, that way we
Thank
can
you.
have Councillor Goyda back.
Thank you.
So I'll just quickly reread it. Just that council directs staff to send correspondence in support of AMO's position on the legislative changes in Bill 132 with respect to the Aggregate Resource Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. So I'm supportive of that. There's been a lot of talk about puts the mayor's, even the municipality, at risk if our water gets contaminated due to aggregate. So I'm supportive of that position, Councillor Bulmer.
Yeah.
Or sorry, Councillor.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
all in favor of that one? Carried. And then I'll just, our Councillor Spoulis and Councillor Bailey, are you comfortable moving and seconding the ATV portion of that? So,
Absolutely, yes.
moved by Councillor Spoulis, seconded by Councillor Bailey, that council directs staff to inquire with the township insurance company to better understand the liability concerns and other implications associated with implementing bylaws to allow off-road vehicles to be driven on municipal highways. Pretty straightforward, but any questions or comments on that? Councillor Bulmer?
Yes, thank you. This is an issue that gets discussed at the Wellington Farm and Home Safety Committee and touched on a little bit at Safe Communities, Wellington County. And this is going to be a challenging one here, since we share policing with the rest of the county. There's a lot of interest in the northern part of the county to permit these vehicles on all local roads, so county and township roads. And I know down here through Center Wellington and Guelph Moss and maybe into Puslinch, the view may be different, and the OPP may have a different approach that they'd like to see taken. So I think we should also include in the future, have maybe even the county would organize this, something from the Wellington County OPP, providing some feedback on this to help each of us decide whether it's something we want to have or not.
I agree. I was going to suggest the same thing, Councillor Balmer, that we should probably have some input from the Wellington County OPP, even just the simple thing of enforcement. How do they keep track of if different municipalities through the county have different rules? How do they
Yeah.
manage keeping track of what is allowed and where. So it would maybe be helpful to have some input from them as well.
Mr. Spillis?
Yes, I raised this because I think it's an upcoming issue. I've seen them on our side roads, and I'm really concerned about that, if there's any liability to us if we don't do anything about it. But I share the concerns with both councils, Paul Margoit have made with respect to consistency and enforcement. I see that as a concern. Perhaps we could ask staff to converse with the other townships to see what their approach is as well. So it might be, we may be all thinking in the same way.
Yeah, we'd like to know what the county's position is going to be, because are they going to allow them on their roads? That was kind of part of the problem with
Agreed,
the
yes.
cannabis consumption. If they stepped onto the county road, then they were allowed, and they're on ours, they were not. And
Yes.
I'll be honest with you, I have an ATV. I've been pulled over a couple times by the OPP, and there's been other times they just drive right by you. And the times we got pulled over was they couldn't see our license plate, so they just wanted to make sure we had all our paperwork, and there was never any mention of fine. So it may not be permitted, but it's also not disallowed. Right? It's just a gray area. I don't know. So this is where we'll need some input from the OPP and even our insurance company. So do we have a resolution for that one? Oh, that's that one. Yep. Okay. Component line out from vehicles, highways. Yep. So I'll read it. Moved by Councillor Spillis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. The council directs staff to inquire with the Township Insurance Company to better understand the liability concerns and other implications associated with implementing bylaws to allow off-road vehicles to be driven on municipal highways, and that the Township inquire with Wellington OPP with respect to the enforcement component of allowing off-road vehicles on municipal highways. All in favor? Carried. So I can't sign that one. Okay, the next one under IG is the OPP News Bulletin. It says MPP new release, MPB, sorry. Any questions or comments? And then Thames Center, any questions or comments? County of Simcoe Conservation Authority exit clause, any questions or comments? None. Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority levy, any questions or comments? Oops, wrong one. Mara Conservation Authority clause. Any questions or comments? Okay. Springwater Conservation Authority levies. Anything? Ban of single-use disposable wipes. Township of Perry. Want to comment on that? No. And then electronic delegations. Councillor Bummer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think as we're very fortunate, we do live in close proximity to Queen's Park. We have the ability to attend conferences and attend delegations with ministers. And I think as a municipality in that position, it'd be nice of us to support a request like this from a municipality that may not be in that position. If you're up north or smaller communities, I think it's a great idea. I don't know the background as to why they don't do it already, or what the restrictions are, but just as supporting another municipality trying to save everybody money and time to get down for a 15-minute meeting with a minister, I think it's a good idea, and I wouldn't mind, passing a resolution in support of this.
Okay. You got a seconder for that resolution?
I'll second it.
Councillor Kuna. All right. Any questions or comments? Councillor Spillis?
Yeah, I think there has to be a saw-off when it's too far type
Yeah.
of thing, and it doesn't make sense for somebody that's within an hour's distance of the conference that they can't send somebody in, even though they're a small municipality. So I understand what you're coming from, and I support it in principle. It's just there's got to be some guidelines associated with it where it's not unreasonable, because once you start getting unreasonable, it's not going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say even, for us, we're fortunate. Mayor Sealy, you were able to attend the annual conference in Ottawa this year. And I'm not sure if you're able to continue to attend that for the next few years of this term. For myself to attend that conference, it's challenging, not just because of the distance, but because of childcare concerns and things like that. So if we wanted to make a delegation at that particular conference and you weren't able to attend and nobody else on council was able to attend, it would be nice to still have the ability to do a delegation electronically. So I would support I don't know what that cutoff would be necessarily, but
We'll just let the province decide that if they want to impose that. We've, before Pat Moyle left, we had a conference call here in council chambers with senior staff for the Aggregate Resource Act, and it was very handy. It worked well. I mean, with today's technology, I don't know how far up north if they have good internet or not, but I mean, as long as you can see them visually and see their reactions, you can have pretty much the same conference as being in place. So I'm supportive of it and just leave it with the province to decide if they want to have a cutoff line.
Okay, like the wording here is it's unjust to have, attend expensive conferences. I think that's a little bit too harsh. I think the province is reasonable, so. We
Well-
can say we support it in principle or something in that matter, but I wouldn't go as far as to say it's unjust.
Yeah, we can support it in principle, the option for electronic delegation and just leave it pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand. It may be unfair or uneven, but yeah, unjust maybe not.
Yeah, I don't think it's, I agree, I
still.
don't think it's unjust, but still. So just don't copy and paste that.
Yeah.
Word it nicely for us,
Just say we support it in principle, I think would be fine.
Okay. Everybody's okay with that, supporting it in principle? Good. Okay, all in favor? That was a separate one for that. Well, that was a new motion, so you've got it captured. We'll sign it later. Okay, I believe that was the last one. So moved by Councillor Spoulis, seconded by Councillor Bailey, that the intergovernmental affairs correspondence items listed on the council agenda for January 2nd, 2020 council meeting be received. All in favor? Okay. Delegations are done. Reports, I don't think. Okay, the first one is the finance report, 2020 interim property tax and due dates. Is there a motion for that? Yes. That report, finance 2020-00, sorry, moved by Councillor Spoulis, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that report, finance 2020-001 regarding the 2020 interim property tax levy and due dates be received, and that council enact a bylaw to provide for the levy and collection of the 2020 interim tax levy. Any questions or comments on that one? No, we're all good. All in favor? Carried. All right. Then we have the third quarter financial report. Moved by Councillor Spoulis, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that report finance 2020-002 regarding the third quarter financial report 2019 be received. Questions and comments on that one? No? Okay. All in favor? All right, this is the part lot exemption. Moved by Councillor Spoulis, seconded by Councillor Goyda. The report PD 2020-001 regarding the exemption for part lot control regarding the properties known as 14 and 18 Elizabeth Place, Pussland, should be received for information, and the council authorize a bylaw to remove part lot control from lots 28 and 29 on registered plan 61M-153. Questions or comments on that one? No? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Hold on, I gotta catch up. Got nothing in admin. Planning, we just did that one. Roads and parks, nothing. Recreation department, mayor's update. Unfortunately, I don't have much. It's been a quiet couple weeks. Notices of motion. Any notices of motion? No, that's good. Okay. Committee minutes, none. Municipal announcements. Anybody? I knew you were going to pick.
Oh, Matthew, according to Matthew.
Councillor Balmer? You have something?
I mentioned this prior to our meeting commencing, or this morning. I think I'd like to welcome our new CAO to his very first official council meeting and acknowledge that, as I said earlier, this is the first male CAO we've had in that position as a full-time CAO since 1975.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I hope we can survive such a shock to the system. But it's been great to get to know you over the few times we've had a chance to meet, and I look forward to working together with you and all your good ideas and experiences. And for the next 10 years, I understand you've committed to.
Thank you very much. Look forward to working with all the council as well.
Any other comments? Okay, yeah, we welcome you. Excellent. And Councillor Bailey, that's the third welcome today.
Yeah, feeling very welcomed.
All right. Any unfinished business? Not seeing none. That's good. All right. Moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Bulmer, that the following bylaws be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. A, bylaw 2020-001, being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for 2020 and the collection thereof. B, bylaw 2020-002, being a bylaw to exempt certain lands from the part lot control provision of the Planning Act. All in favor? Okay, yeah,
Oh,
so
that's right.
now we're going to have to recess for our closed session as the consultant is not quite here yet. So we'll reconvene as soon as they arrive and we'll go into closed.
I'll go give her a call and see what her time frame is.
She's supposed to be here for 2. So yeah, do whatever you like, I'm fine.